All right, Mr. Chairman, if you want, we can run through the agenda real quick and you guys can go have your meals.
Go for it.
Okay, so number one is a deferral again. Number two is also a deferral. And these are both date specific to July, which is the 13th.
13th, right.
Yep. Number three, we would propose for consent. Number four would propose for consent. Okay, we'll pull that one. Number five, we would propose for consent. We'll hear. Okay, all right. So we'll hear 4 and 5. We'll hear number 6. We would propose 7 for consent. We would propose 8 for consent. And we would propose 9 for consent. So we'll pull 4, 5. We were already going to hear 6. So unless anybody else has any additions.
Okay. All good.
All right. We will see you back here at 6.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call June 8th, 2022 Design Review Committee meeting to order. Christina, can you call the roll?
Simple. Zabala,
Here.
Rudine,
Here.
Marsh, Aguilar, Zuckerman,
Here.
Erstad,
Here.
4 present, 3 absent.
At this time, I'll take a motion on the May 11th, 2022 minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I would move for approval of the hearing minutes of May 11th, 2022 as provided by staff. Second.
moved and seconded. Would you please call a roll?
Zabala,
Aye.
Rudine,
Aye.
Zuckerman,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Tonight, there are 2 items that are up for deferral. First item is item number 1, DRH 21-00376. Construction of a new approximately 1 million square foot warehouse and distribution center with 98 truck docks and associated site improvements on property in a pending M1D zone. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this item who could not make it to that date or online? Seeing none, the second item that's up for deferral is item number 2, DRH 22-00136, the construction of 2 new buildings totaling approximately 15,000 square feet for use as an office and warehouse with associated site improvements on property in a C1DDA commercial, zone. For this item, are there any members of the audience wishing to speak to this item who cannot make that July 13th date? Seeing none, I would take a motion to put for those deferral items.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I move to defer items DRH 21-00376 and DRH 22-00136 to the July 13th meeting.
Second.
moved and seconded. Christina, will you do a roll call?
Rudine,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Zuckerman,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
The first item we are considering for tonight's consent agenda is item number 3, DRH 22-00156. Construct a new approximately 2,700 square foot oil change facility with associated site improvements in a C2DDA zone. Is the applicant present? I don't see. They're online and present.
Yes, I'm for the applicant.
Okay. Are you in agreement with recommended conditions of approval?
Yes,
Does records show that they are in agreement with the conditions of approval? Are there any members of the public wishing to testify in opposition to this item? Seeing none online or in person. The second item up for consent agenda is item number 7, DRH 22-00172. Construct a new approximately 82,000 square foot industrial warehouse building with associated site improvements on property in an M1D zone. Is the applicant present? The applicant is present. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval? Yes, sir. Let the record show that the applicant is in agreement. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify in opposition to this item? Seeing none. The third item for the consent agenda is item number 8, DRH 22-00174. construct a new 4-story hotel building with associated site improvements on property in a C3D zone. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
The applicant is present. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes.
The applicant indicates that they are in agreement. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify in opposition to this item?
Yes.
Then we will take that off of the consent agenda. The last item on our consent agenda is item number 9, DRH 2200176. Modify a previously approved multifamily project, increasing the unit count to 187 units and modifying the layout of building design and materials in a C5DD zone. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I am.
Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes, I am.
Are there any members of the public wishing to testify in opposition to this item? Seeing none at this point, I would take a motion on the consent agenda items.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I would move for consent approval of items number 3, 7, and 9 on the agenda, subject to the findings of fact and conclusions of law indicated in the respective staff reports.
Second.
moved and seconded. Christina, call a roll.
Braden,
Aye.
Zabala,
Aye.
Zuckerman,
Aye.
Erstad,
Abstain.
3 in favor, 1 abstain, motion carries.
The first item to be heard tonight will be DRH 2200157. Construct a new approximately 16,000 square foot, 2-story fire station with associated site improvements on property in a C2DD zone. The staff could please make their report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is an application for a new 2-story fire station. It is located at the northeast corner of West Front Street and South 16th Street. The property is in the downtown planning area. The existing fire station building is being replaced by this new building. Just looking at the site plan quickly, the fire apparatus bays are taking access off of 16th Street. And then there is some surface parking on the east. The building design and materials include some traditional as well as contemporary details that do reference that original historic building. And with that, I will leave it up to the applicant if they would like to give their presentation.
And if you would give your name and address before you get started for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and member of the committee. And thank you, Kathleen, for the introduction. My name is Yi-Chen Liao from Hum Architect. Address is 205 10th Street, Boise, Idaho. We also have Brian Coleman, associate of Hum Architect, and Sarah Schiffer, the project manager of Public Works, here tonight. Next, please. So as you know, the project is located at 16 and Front Street. Due to the limited size of this project, the apparatus bay has to have backing 3 fire trucks. So next, please. So the fire crew is seeking for the memory of the old central fire station. So the frontage of the 16th Street and Front Street has familiar brick pattern, and the rhythm of the window and arch opening to bring back the memory of the old central station. At the busiest corner of this junction, it also has a public display hall housing a antique fire engine with several artifacts. You will draw public visual interest, and it integrate with a herringbone brick paver, so to serve as a public civic plaza. Next, please. On the interior side of the lot, on the second floor, it has a residential space for the fire crew, same as the barbecue deck. The contemporary material of two-color fiber cement board will make coherence with the future adjacent housing development. Next, please. Lastly, the utilitarian facade of this alley area. We utilize high out block with painted sign. Next, please. This is our first attempt to address staff recommend condition. As you know, the limited size of this lot try to reduce the burden of the fire crew. We will locate the low shrub landscape planter in front of historic display hall. Also to prevent the obstruction of visual light in front of the abbey, so that we will only place a historic light along the 16th Street. And on the interior lot of the site, we will push the property line 5 feet over in order to have a landscape buffer between the future mixed-use development. Okay. This is our presentation, and thank you, and open for question.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I've got a lot to say about this, but I think a lot of it is really not so much questions as commentary. What drove the decision to have the station face out onto front versus, or onto 16th versus front? And why? Well, several years ago, this was talked about as something that could be included in a larger RFP for the larger block. And so parking would have been incorporated with the overall development that included mixed use housing. So rather than seeing what we typically see, which would be maybe like a nose in parking off of the alley, now we've got a surface parking lot here that is typically something that the city's often trying to discourage. But I guess if it's city owned property, they can kind of just flaunt that preferred approach. I think I don't know enough about what went into this project to understand why it looks the way it looks, which is like 3 buildings that don't do a very good job of addressing any street. You know, we want to activate a street edge, and there's no, you know, personal interaction with Front Street. There's some activity that can be seen through the garage doors into the garage bays off of 16th, but that doesn't really interact with you know, the park across the street or any of the other potential challenging issues that present themselves at this location. There's a lot of mention of referentialism in this application, but if we go back and look at the central fire station, there's a symmetry to both of those facades that is not present here. There's a rhythm there that's not present here. There's a detailing on the masonry that admittedly is not cheap, but it's a major characteristic of that building. It's not present here. There's a very prominent bell tower that has a strong presence on that corner. It's not that, I mean, it's kind of referenced here, but by a 6-inch variation in the facade depth and only on one side. I don't understand why so many of these design decisions were made, and I'm just struggling to see why this is a building that we would want as a civic building. This is it just seems like a poor example that now it's going to have the city's name on it.
You have a response, or I'm not sure which question there is, or
Like I said, a lot of this was more commentary than questions, but I think there's just a lot here that is, it's not up to snuff. I don't think this adequately addresses some of the challenges that this neighborhood has. And I think, we've got this plaza out front that is pretty much desolate without, anything to make it habitable. I guess there's a low shrub landscape planter, but otherwise it's just pavement, which is, barely an improvement on what's already there. I guess it's better than cracked asphalt, but I'd like to see it. I'd like to hear what other members of the committee think about this.
I'll go ahead and let the applicant respond to your comments.
Yeah, so you mentioned the parking, surface parking, because due to the undetermined mixed-use housing units beside, in the future, it might be a role to play with a future development. You probably won't see it for now. And regarding to the brick pattern, the rhythm, and the detail of the brickwork, we do try to achieve by using more contemporary way. For example, like the precast concrete lintel and the precast articulate arch. We do try to use a more modern way and thermally efficient to make this fire station more energy efficient. And you also mentioned the tower. We understand this is a new fire station, and the economic of current day, it might reduce our ability to construct a real tower in this project. So that's my first respondent to the member of committee.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it seems to me like this is, I have some comments, but I feel like I should wait till after all the
Okay.
procedures. Is that correct?
Either place is fine. If you want to have them give a response to it, this would be the time to say it.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it on?
I just checked.
Oh, okay. So any other questions or comments?
I'll wait until after.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there any member of the public or online that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and open it up for discussion with the committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. I am going to disagree with some of what my fellow committee member Erstat just said. I think that trying to build an old-fashioned looking building modern day usually looks cheesy, and I like to commend you for pulling it off. This looks like a fire station, and it looks how I'd want a fire station to look. And I like that it's recognizable to anybody in the area as, oh, that's a fire station. The arched bays help a lot with that. Just the whole brick style of the building and the repetition of the arches makes it look like a friendly civic building. The plaza does a great job at, kids can come and look at the fire truck, or that's where the firefighters wash the fire truck, or whatever it is that's on public display. That is always fun for anybody passing by to see. And again, police stations and fire stations, I believe, should be recognizable by the public so people know where to go. And I don't know what people go to fire stations for anymore, but to visit the Dalmatians and hopefully not drop off a baby in a basket. But it looks to me like a fire station should look. And I think that the plaza does address the area. If this was in a different neighborhood, I would have more of an issue with it. And if it was a different kind of building in this neighborhood, I would have an issue with the fact that it doesn't address all three sides of the sidewalk, and it doesn't create activity, but it's a fire station. It's not a, mixed use building or commercial building or anything else. So no matter how it's built, it's going to be the same number of people walking in and out, and all of the glass that allows people to look in is sort of standard for fire station. So I think it's great. And I think it really suits the spot and addresses the public at the same time. And I think that the original fire station is gorgeous. We can't build like that anymore. And I think trying to build a replica of that would be doing a disservice to history and the architects of the day. So I think it's a great project, and I'd love to see it built.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm probably maybe the only one on this panel and maybe in this room that is old enough to know and have been around the older fire station. I grew up in that neighborhood.
Do you need some help with your chair, Tom?
I need some help with my chair. Actually, I spent a lot of time a block away in my grandfather's boarding house to the west of this building. So I spent a lot of time in that neighborhood. At the time that original building was built, it was probably the only fire station in town, and it had to have a certain monumentality. And being at that location in the heart of downtown, it needed a little bit more prominence than where this current site is. The site to the north of that former building used to be a residence, so the other elevations made sense. They carried it all around on the four sides of that particular building. And looking at this particular project, when I first looked at it, I struggled a little bit at the different looks on the four elevations. But as I sat and thought through that, I realized that probably the north elevation, which has the big letter 5 on it, and that is on an alley. And sooner or later, the buildings to the north of this particular project are probably going to be not there. And whatever will take their place will probably be a little bit more site impactful, vertical, and that it will be an alley front. The face that to the east, that took me a little bit longer to get used to. But as I realized that the future plans for the site to the east is a multifamily house multifamily development. I'm again assuming, given the other residential projects going up in town, that it's going to have a certain amount of verticality to it, or that elevation will not be as visible as what we see in the renderings today. As far as its orientation and the engines coming out onto 16th Street, I think that makes a lot more sense. 16th is a lot wider street to come out on. Front Street going that direction is a very narrow street across from Rhodes Park, and it wouldn't function well for the apparatus that are going to be in those 3 days. So I think on balance, I think it's a good solution for that site. I have no problems with it. I think the design team and the city have done a very respectable job of applying for this. And looking at the internal functioning of the building, I think it's going to work very well for that site. And it's been in sore need of that for a long, long time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I can see I'm in the minority here. I agree. This looks like, from a very basic standpoint, a fire station. We've got the arches, we've got the brick and the precast stone. I think my contention is that it's not applied in a way that is cohesive. I think that without imitating or completely replicating every detail of the referenced station, we can still arrive at a similar sort of modulation to the facade and basic design principles that are characteristic of the kind of the romantic revivalism that's on display in the reference. And I think this is just it's not a very cohesive facade, which maybe that's just me being picky. But at the end of the day, I just don't think this is a very good example of civic architecture. And I'm in the minority there as well, but that's why we have a lot of voices on these.
Any other questions or somebody ready for a motion?
Are we done?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move for approval of DRH 22-00157 as recommended in the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the recommended conditions of approval as noted in the project report.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Rudin,
Aye.
Sabala,
Aye.
Zuckerman,
Aye.
Erstad,
Nope.
3 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries.
The next item up for discussion is DRH, item number 5, DRH 22-00163, construct a new 7-story multifamily residential building with 104 units, structured parking and ground floor amenity space on property in a C5 DDDA zone. I'll turn it over to staff.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is approximately 0.36 acres located at the northeast corner of West State Street and North 16th Street. The area is comprised of commercial buildings along State Street and 16th Street. Here's the site plan. Access is off of 16th Street. You can see the drive here. The applicant is also providing an easement where this portion of, I believe it was vacated alley, is used by these surrounding properties for access currently. So they'll be providing an easement to the city for public access there. This did go through a rezone with a development agreement. The rezone was CAR 20-00019. And then after that rezone occurred, they did come back to P&Z for a parking reduction due to discovering a sewer easement that required them to remove quite a bit of their parking. And that parking reduction was approved. So if you want to look at the elevations, this is 16th Street. You can see that access point here. And then at the corner is storefront on the ground floor. And this is the elevation along State Street. And there is second level parking on the second level as well as the ground floor. And I believe the applicant is in agreement with all the conditions of approval. We did note that they would be switching the proposed planters to trees and tree grates with silvocels, which will provide some additional room on the sidewalk. And with that, the applicant is present if you'd like to hear their presentation.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicant at this point. And once again, state name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Ben White with GGLO 1199 Shoreline Lane. Thanks, Caitlin, for your presentation and the thorough report. As she mentioned, we are in agreement with the recommendations and the conditions of approval. So we'll keep our presentation fairly brief, but we did want to talk just a little bit about the why behind the development and the design of the building. Next slide. As she mentioned, there's been a bit of history to get us to this point over the last couple of years. We worked through the rezone with the development agreement, which set some of the overall limitations of height and number of units for the project. And then the subsequent conditional use was approved. The overall development vision for this site really grew out of that recognized need that we're all aware of for more affordable housing near downtown. And this site is really a prime location to bring that housing to downtown and really coincides with a lot of the city's development goals. Next slide. So as you can see, as you're probably familiar, it's located at the corner of 16th and State, adjacent to a number of principal arterials. It's at the edge of the downtown core, kind of the transition zone to the more single-family residential neighborhoods to the north and the east, but incredible walkability to a variety of services, jobs, different other amenities. Next slide. And it is in the downtown planning area, just right on the edge of it, as well as the existing West Side Urban Renewal District, and it fronts on the State Street Priority Corridor. Next slide. And being on State Street, it's great opportunities for transit access with the existing bus stops, the secondary transit station plans at 16th and State. As well as the well-established existing bike lanes on either side of the block and go in a variety of directions. Next slide. Yes. So really, when we look at the goals of Blueprint Boise and the aim to provide higher density infill development, provide more workforce housing near those transit corridors, and with great walkability to downtown jobs and services, this aligns really well with that. State Street corridor as well. There's providing more transit-oriented development, providing that missing middle housing near those transit stations. And then with the North End neighborhood plan as well, looking at those underutilized areas, particularly like along State Street, the southern edge of the North End neighborhood, where there's potential activity centers that are currently pretty undeveloped, such as this intersection and the one a block to the west. Next slide, please. So the goal is more specific to this development, is to provide that compact development near the downtown core. We wanted to create some layouts that are very efficient to create a higher density and increase the number of available apartments, really maximize what we could do on the site, take advantage of those connections to the transportation corridors and the bike lanes. And then along the frontages, our goal is to create these pedestrian oriented spaces with active uses, lots of visibility into the interior. Overall, contribute to that pool of diverse and affordable housing. The units are arranged around an interior courtyard so that they all have access to light and views. There's some really incredible views from this site towards downtown, as well as the foothills, as you are all familiar. And then looking really closely at the units to maximize the efficiency of those layouts, to increase the number of units, and also looking at increasing the ceiling heights so that we can provide really ample windows. Even though they're smaller efficiency units, we can provide more units, but still make them really livable spaces with a lot of natural daylight. With that, I'll turn it over to Carissa to talk a little bit more about the building.
Thank you. Carissa Franks. I'm with GGLO and 1199 Shoreline Lane is the address. So I'll go ahead and just walk you through the floor plans. Next slide, please. So as Ben mentioned, at the ground level, we have our active uses really focused at the intersection. Lots of glazing and visibility associated with retail at the corner, as well as a lobby adjacent to 16th Street. We also have a sizable bike room associated, with the pedestrian realm, and also emerging transit use in the area. As we move up throughout the building, as you can see, we have 2 levels of structured parking. This is the second level with that space at the corner, creating a nice tall volume, generous volume that addresses the street and the intersection. Next slide, please. The floor plan is an L-shaped floor plan with the studios arranged around a courtyard, a podium style courtyard. As you can see, the volumes, the massing alternates to just provide interest and variation. Very simple floor plan with daylit corridors. As we move up through the building, thank you. You can see that floor plan starts to step back. I think one of the key defining features of the building is the way that it steps down to meet lower lying development and also the residential context to the north. Next slide, please. Finally, at the upper level, we have a residential roof deck oriented with an amazing view to the Capitol building. And you can see how that massing is increasingly condensed at the upper level. Next slide, please. This is a section that shows that generous 20-foot floor to floor that I described, and also that typical 13-foot floor to floor height, as Ben mentioned, that's really unique in this product type. And you can see our 2 levels of structured parking oriented towards the alley. And as we move through the elevations, I can show how we have treated that facade to screen it from view, but also provide natural ventilation. So this elevation shows that, the perspective view shows that the building pulls very tight to the sidewalk with that very active corner that we spoke about, a pattern of alternating volumes help to break down the mass and also create interest and movement in the building. Those volumes are further differentiated with the variance in height and also a slight tone shift in a more neutral palette. This perspective is also great for showing our access on 16th to the parking garage, where it's located to kind of address slower moving traffic. This really frees up State Street to be a truly kind of transit oriented facing facade. Next slide, please. This brings us around the corner. I think it's also important to note that those 13-foot floor to floor, that 13-foot floor to floor allows for really tall glazing that helps enhance the livability of these units, but also creates a really striking elevation that presents out to the city and the street. We've also included some sunshades that help mitigate solar gain on those large windows. As you can see, also the roof deck that's oriented towards the Capitol building. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is a great view for kind of highlighting some of the wood toned accents that we are integrating, both in the areas associated with the corridor where the building steps down, as well as at grade, as creating a wood tone soffit at the primary weather protection for days like today. Oh, sorry, if you could go back. I just wanted to also point out the screening that is very much integrated with the facade and kind of placed in such a way that it complements very intentionally the strength of the concrete frame that highlights the retail at the corner. Next slide, please. I just wanted to share some of our inspiration photos, kind of pairing that more neutral palette that's helping to define those really simple and clean volumes with some pops of a more warm material to just emphasize livability and warmth of the project. Next slide, please. A little more information about our material palette, showing the stone wood that's proposed at those upper levels, as well as a pre-finished metal panel. It's chosen for durability and also just high quality, frankly. Then showing the wood finished metal soffit, as well as the concrete finishes proposed for the project. The pre-finished metal panel and fiber cement also help to, as the project wraps around the block, those are integrated as well. Next slide. And we'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for committee or for the?
Mr. Chair,
presenter? Yes.
could you go into you may have touched on it, but I didn't see it in the materials at the very end. The screening method for the parking garage.
Absolutely. I think some of the perspective views show it well. The intent is that it's just a painted metal fin that is monochromatic, so blending in with that concrete finish. So provides a bit of texture and also kind of references the verticality of the material used above. So there's a feeling of that kind of movement transcending the podium.
Thank you. And for staff, looking at the entrance onto 16th Street. There we go. And it might actually help to have the site plan. So it's got that material difference, but it also shows the curb only coming off the face of the building there between the alley and the entryway by probably about 5 feet. That doesn't seem like there's really a lot of precedent for that within ACHD standards. Is that something that has many standards attached to it, or is this kind of a unique condition?
Mr. Chair, Committee Member Erstab, this is a bit of a unique area because of that turn lane there. And then this access is already sort of existing on the site. So the applicant is narrowing the access and reconstructing their drive access as well. And then we have the situation where there's that alley that's not really an alley anymore, but it's kind of being used as an alley. So we do have a lot of strange circumstances kind of coming together, but ACHD has not indicated that this is an issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant or staff? Is there any member of the public that would like to testify on this online or in person? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and open it up to staff discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I will speak directly into the microphone as instructed. I'm crazy excited about this building and live very close by and have been watching it carefully. I have a criticism for our standards and a compliment for the building. I am not a fan of varied roof lines, which we often ask for. And this varied roof line is the first time I've seen one that actually makes sense, that it doesn't look like it's forced and it doesn't have this whole up and down thing like it's almost a castle, but not really, and creating its own skyline where it doesn't need one. But this makes sense that it's as tall as it can be and steps down toward the neighborhood. And I think that was a great use of that. The same thing with the undulating facade, or the at least variation in the facade. So I'm from Chicago and I like really tall buildings, and often like the John Hancock Tower and the Sears Tower, they make sense and they're just straight. And then I moved out of Chicago and saw that nobody else does that. Well, New York does that, but Boise doesn't do that. And here, like, I almost want it to be flat, but it makes sense because it's on the edge of a neighborhood that the building can't look any bigger than it is. And I know that you guys have been through a whole lot with neighborhood, how should I say, suggestions, recommendations, input, feedback, whatever. So I think this is the best I could possibly hope to see for this site. And I think it's a beautiful building, and love that you left the corner to be activated by something retail so that it feels like it's open to the whole neighborhood and not just for those who are going into the lobby. And I think it's going to raise the design standard for whoever's going to build tall next in the area, because I think we all know that more of this is coming. And at least might get some residents thinking like, oh, we don't have to settle for mediocrity. We can do something cool like this. So thank you for raising the standards. And I can't wait to see it built, and love that it, we're design review. We're not planning and zoning, and we didn't write Blueprint Boise, but it's a huge bonus that it both complies and forwards the goals of the city in general with housing more people in a already dense area. So thank you and kudos.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would concur with Dana's comments there. This building and its intended use and what it hopes to do with providing living opportunities for a particular group of people that are not dependent on the car and more dependent on walking, bicycling, mass transit, whatever we've got in proximity to downtown. I think they've done a great job in showing that that particular group can live in and be a part of a very handsome building down there. The design team and the applicant have to be congratulated on, I think, a building that has a lot of things going on for it at that particular corner. It's a very active corner with a major north-south or a north-south connection on 16th Street, and obviously east and west on State Street. And I think it's going to be a very bold statement on that corner. The materials, the textures, the way they're handled, the increased floor heights, the use of more awnings on a building rather than token awnings, and a few scattered places that we've seen on some of these buildings is really well done. I'm very happy to see this building go in that location.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I am also very excited about this building. I go by it daily. I was ecstatic to see the billboards come down on the adjacent building, and even more ecstatic to see the notice of public hearing signs posted. After this kind of, everything goes behind the scenes when you're ironing out the kinks, right? So it's kind of disappeared off the radar for a while, and it's very exciting to see it again. I, by and large, agree with committee member Zuckerman about arbitrary roof heights. I think that just within this specific location, it might be thematically appropriate to bump up the parapet on either the dark or the light ones of those where they are all at the same level, just to kind of accentuate that sort of variegation that is already thematic. Not a lot, just subtly. But on a more serious note, I am concerned about this 16th Street access point and the fact that it sets a pedestrian at street level for, was that 50 feet right there? I'm wondering if there's, can we discuss maybe pulling the actual curb out to be in line with the gutter and maybe doing a rolled edge for the access point versus, just having it drop down to street level the entire way out there. I think that, having that materials change there on the sidewalk helps, but it doesn't, offer the same feeling of safety to a pedestrian, and it isn't as safe. So I just worry about someone coming in on 16th kind of hot, cutting that corner because it's all just street level and causing problems.
Sorry about that. Any other questions or comments or a motion or a modification of anything?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Because there's no rebuttal phase here, I am going to take it on good faith that this is something that has been discussed at the very least. I hope there's a very specific reason behind the way that the curb is laid out as it is. But I don't know that this is necessarily something I would include in a motion.
Okay. Is there a motion to terminate it?
I'll
Approve it?
jump into it. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move for approval of DRH 22-00163 as recommended in the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the recommended conditions of approval as noted in the staff project report.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd call the roll.
Rudine,
Aye.
Sabala,
Aye.
Zuckerman,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is DRH 22-00164 and DRH 22-00165. Construct a total of 13 new self-service storage buildings with associated site improvements on property in an M2D zone. Is the applicant, or I'll turn it over to staff, I guess.
All right, good evening. Mr. Chairman and committee members, before you is DRH 22-00164 and DRH 22-00165. My name is Rachel Farrell, and I'm a design review planner for the city of Boise. This project is located at 9700 Blue Cloud Lane on an approximately 14-acre site, split into two parcels, located on the west side of I-84, north and east of Eisman Road. The lot directly to the west is currently vacant and owned by the city of Boise, and eventually Blue Cloud Lane will be going away. The land use designation is industrial and it is located within the airport planning area. The applicant proposes to construct 12 new self-storage buildings and 2 accessory offices. RV parking is also proposed. Access will be off Freight Street, which will be extended into a private access road to be constructed along the north and will head around to the east side of the site towards the south for a second entrance. Both entrances will be gated and a sidewalk will be constructed along both frontages. Parking and bike racks are being provided near both entrances adjacent to the front office buildings. The applicant originally proposed street trees along Freight Street and the private access road facing I-84 and along Blue Cloud Lane. However, since Blue Cloud Lane will eventually no longer be a road according to future transportation plans, the trees along Blue Cloud Lane frontage were removed. And this is showing the trees removed along that frontage, with the change happening on the east side of the site and with no other changes happening to the rest of the landscape plans. Just quickly, this is a rendering providing an example of what the self-storage buildings would look like and the offices near the building entries. And myself and staff are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn it over to the applicant.
So David Sterling with TO Engineers, 2471 South Titanium Place in Meridian. I'm filling in for Alec. He was listed as the applicant on here. We're in agreement with the staff report. We did just make that last minute change on Monday with the landscaping because Blue Cloud Lane will go away. We just wanted to remove all those trees that we had proposed on that side. And that's really why we asked to be off the consent agenda so we could get that change in. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It wasn't clear to me, and maybe I didn't read this properly. Is the RV parking for storage or parking for people to live in an RV?
No, it's all storage.
Okay.
And so, and on all storage is internal. There's no like RV parking, like outdoor parking.
Thank you. That helps.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public or online that would like to make a comment or testify? Seeing none, I'll close the open portion of the hearing and let the staff discuss it and create a motion. Any discussion? Or a motion? Yes.
Mr. Chair. I believe there are several members of the audience that said they were here to testify against this, or is this? No,
No,
I'm
it's the
sorry.
next one.
It's the next one. Apologies. In that case, I move to approve DRH 22-00164 and DRH 22-00165 according to the recommendations and requirements, and conclusions, and findings of fact and law noted in the project report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? See, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that, I'd like us to build more beautiful, thoughtful buildings, but I also recognize that this is a self-storage building and a place to house RVs, and I'm not sure it makes sense to ask more of the applicant than what they're doing. So given that, I'll support the motion.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll.
Rudine,
Aye.
Sabala,
Aye.
Zuckerman,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is DRH 22-00174. Construct a new 4-story hotel building with associated site improvements on property in a C3D zone. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is a request for a new hotel building. It is located on Airport Way, and it's actually kind of unique because it's encircled completely by this terminus of Airport Way. So we're located near the airport. The applicant's going to be providing new public sidewalk along the entirety of the site. You can see that in the updated site plan. They are proposing that sidewalk all the way around. And the applicant is in agreement with all the conditions of approval. And I believe the applicant's here if you'd like to hear the presentation.
Thank you very much. Turn it over to the applicant.
Oh, I can do that.
And a reminder, give your name and address if you would.
Thank you. My name's Connor Candry and I'm with Kimley Horn. I'm at 1100 West Idaho Street in Boise, Idaho. You can go to the next slide right away. Thank you. So I also have Colin Thompson on the Zoom call, who I will tag in to talk about the architectural standards on this project. This is the rest of the design team. Next slide, please. As staff had mentioned, this site is quite unique. It's close to the airport and fully enclosed by West Airport Way roadway. Here's a site plan. We can reference that if there's any further questions. Landscape plan. From a parking standpoint, we're required to have 122 spaces based on the 122 rooms for this hotel. We are proposing 126 spaces. Bicycle spaces required is 13, and we're proposing 14, 6 of which will be covered by the entry awning. Next slide, please. From a connectivity standpoint, as staff mentioned, we are proposing sidewalks around the entire site with a pedestrian connection to the public right of way. And I'm going to pass it over to Colin to introduce himself and talk about the architectural standards.
Yes, thank you, Connor. Can members of the committee hear me? Great, thank you. As mentioned, my name is Colin Thompson. I am an architect with BRR Architecture, and my address is 2200 6th Avenue in Seattle, Washington. As Connor mentioned, we're proposing a Woodspring Suites hotel here. It is a brand that is geared towards an extended stay market, and that means stays generally typically longer than 2 or 3 days, but less than 30 days. And this brand is affiliated with Choice Hotels International. As you can see here, the exterior facade is really geared towards a more modern and clean color palette and aesthetic that features a thin brick base banding that you can see on the first floor there, really to ground the hotel project and provide a little bit more of that pedestrian scale and experience for individuals coming in and out of the hotel. Above that brick banding, you'll be able to see what our materials proposed are lap fiber cement siding, both in the white color and the gray color palette, as well as a wood tone wood look siding, which you'll be able to see a little bit further on in our presentation, located both over the primary entrance there in the orange palette, and then also at our end stair conditions to tie a little bit of warmth into that color palette as well. Over the front primary entrance of the building, you can see a large exterior canopy, both providing weather coverage for the bicycle parking spaces and also to help provide some wayfinding and pedestrian orientation to the primary building entrance and lobby space. And if we can go to the next slide here, we'll be moving over to the rear rendering of the project. As required within the design review requirements, you can see we are providing a rear canopy at the rear project entrance. In addition to project canopies located over both building entrances on the ends of the building. Those are currently proposed to be prefabricated metal canopies, both again to help provide some accentuation of the building primary entrances and exits, and then also to provide weather protection for guests staying within the hotel. I did want to note one item that is an intentional design decision both on the front primary facade and the rear facade here, which is the termination of that brick banding to not continue across the entire of the first floor there. Really, the intention there is to provide a little bit of breakup from the horizontality of the building, specifically looking back on the front facade. That helps to, again, really provide a little bit of language and expression, accentuating and building upon both that primary stair vertical elements on the corner condition there, as well as the wood tone element there, both on the back and the front to break up the horizontal language, which kind of feel and relate to like a hoagie sandwich if that bottom brick banding was continuous across the entirety of the building. If we move over to the elevations, thank you. The heights proposed are 36'7" to the eave of our sloped roof assemblies, and the height to the midline of 42.2, which is compliant with the 45-foot height restriction of this project. And we can continue to the next elevations. Again, showing the breakup of the horizontal banding there to provide a little bit of that vertical expression with the continuation of that fiber cement siding down to grade. And looking at the first floor of this hotel, as I mentioned, there is a primary entrance lobby for the hotel. There is no food and beverage component to this proposed hotel. However, there is a guest laundry facility included for residents staying at the hotel, in addition to a small fitness amenity room space provided. As Connor mentioned, if we can go to the next slide, perfect. There are 122 proposed guest rooms in this building. And here you can see the prefabricated metal canopies being proposed over the first floor rear entry, as well as the exits on both ends of the building. And if we can continue here, again, just the floor plans continuing up the building, providing the 122 guest rooms. And as previously discussed, the materials we are proposing on the exterior facade include fiber cement siding, both in the white and cool gray colors, in addition to the wood tone, wood look lap siding, and thin brick, cream colored brick base banding.
These are the conditions that were in the staff report. As a reminder, we are in agreement with all these conditions and are actively working with staff to address them. and we are requesting approval for a design review permit. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions for the staff or applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Sure. And we have Justin Reef to testify. Again, name and address if you would, please.
Justin Reif, representing
Reif, sorry.
excuse me, you're fine. Representing Mountain View RV Park at 2040 West Airport Way, Boise, Idaho 83705. I understand this is a design review process. However, it's my our first opportunity to address a public forum and some major concerns that we have. Any improvement on this site, we welcome, we love, we have no issue with the design of this hotel. I think that we're putting the cart before a horse here with regards to ACHD, the Idaho Transportation Department as well. First and foremost would be parking issues that we are extraordinarily concerned with. Yes, 122 units, 126 parking spaces is 1.03 spaces per hotel room. With a longer term hotel stay, you're going to have multiple vehicles per room or per family dwelling that is in that room due to the same issues you hear about every single day with lack of affordable housing and housing in the area. Along the same lines with parking, if you were to tomorrow morning, if you could take a break from work, run on down Airport Way and look at the other hotels that are right down the street there and count I think this morning I counted 9 dilapidated RVs parked on the side of the roads with multiple vehicles with them staying at some of these longer term hotels, which now create safety issues, sanitary issues, bottleneck issues. So parking is a major concern for us, meaning we're going to be a neighbor here. We'd like to have adequate parking both for our facility as well as this hotel facility. Secondly, would be the vehicle impact. There was a 1-day study, I guess a 24-hour study that was talked about vehicles coming up and down the roadway there. This study said that with a 2% growth projection for next year, that this hotel is going to generate approximately 899 vehicle trips per day. So that's in and out because the unique plot of this land is just a circular road. So you've got vehicles every time they come in, that same vehicle has to come out. So the hotel alone is going to generate, and from their own analysis, is 899 vehicles per day. The current vehicle count with a 24-hour period of time was 1,025 vehicles. So according to, excuse me here, let me get so according to ACHD, their policy of 7207.3.1 states that on local streets of this nature, the vagary of should typically be less than 2,000 vehicles, I think is a very gross undercount of the potential of this. And here's why I come to that conclusion. This 24-hour vehicle count that was taking place happened on a Wednesday in the end of March. And from the site overview picture here, just to the east of that empty lot where the proposed hotel is going to go, there's a short-term vehicle parking lot for the airport short-term vehicle storage, I guess. Just to the west of this, there's another parking lot. Both parking lots in this photo show them being empty, which is not the case. The parking lot to the west is a Northwest hub for Hertz rental vehicles. So at any given day, there's 4 to 5 car hauling semi trucks that are dropping off vehicles to that Hertz development to unload, reload vehicles. Then every single one of those vehicles is being transported from that location down Airport Way over to the airport for folks that are flying in and out. So the reason I say that 1-day traffic impact is potentially flawed in many, many ways is because most folks are getting vehicles from the rental car agency and parking vehicles in the short-term airport parking lot area near weekends or near weekdays, not to mention our facility. So being an RV park at any given time, I have 45-foot coaches with 35-foot utility trailers behind them. Their gross total weight's going to be in the ballpark of 60 to 70,000 pounds per item that are coming and going. And this traffic assessment of this 24-hour period in the end of March happens to be one of our slowest months of the year. So it does not nearly grasp the full capacity of the load on that roadway nor the potential hazards for vehicle safety and pedestrian safety. I love the idea of having a sidewalk,
Time.
but people are going to be in danger walking on that sidewalk. And then lastly would be storm drain water runoff. I don't think that's been accounted for either with, I believe that would also be an ACHD. So we're going to pave over 2.5 acres of land that's absorbing water runoff at this point in time and put a 50,000 square foot building on there. Then we're going to take that storm water, we're going to plumb it into 2 storm drains that encompass that entire facility that are already at capacity and flood every single time it rains. And if you want to take a glance, come up on Sunday when we're going to have a 1/2 inch of rain, and you'll see both of those flooding. And that's with the absorption of 2 acres of raw land absorbing some of that water.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next is Pat Breton.
Thank you. My name is Pat Braden. I have a business on 1864 West Airport Way. I've been there for 33 years. And my concern is noise. I have an automotive machine shop and we build engines. And part of my goal in engine development requires a dynamometer. So you put an engine on a dyno and you run it, which makes noise. So I don't know how the noise is going to impact the hotel. You know, what I'm concerned about is the hotel comes and changes my way of business. You know, Smith Detroit Diesel behind me, they do diesel work, diesel trucks. They have a dyno, a truck dyno, which is pretty noisy, you know. And another concern I have is down the road in the future, when I get ready to sell the property and the business, what restrictions am I going to have because of the hotel being there? Is that going to change in any way what I've already have? That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would ask the applicant if you want to come back and talk about any of the issues that have been brought up by those 2 testimonies.
Yes, thank you. So to address the concern about not enough parking, as I had mentioned, we are over parking this property. The right-of-way width of Airport Way is wide enough to accommodate on-street parking on both sides of the road as it currently does. I will agree, if you drive out there, there's a lot of vehicles parked on the side of the road. The standard from ACHD is to conduct a traffic study on a midweek day, so Tuesday through Thursday, and they required a 1-day study for this site. From a stormwater standpoint, we are retaining all of our stormwater on site and utilizing a underground seepage bed. So we will not be tying into the public system that is currently experiencing backups. From a noise standpoint, with it being so close to the airport, we are going to be implementing the standards set forward by the city of Boise to dampen noise, just because we are in the influence B zone. I would assume this could also help with the concern about the noise of the dyno. That's all I have. Unless Colin, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Connor. I would just add to second Connor's point there, you know, we are aware of the airport influence B zone requirements that do factor in consideration to the hotel design for increased noise reduction and STC performance. So part of what our project team is aware of is evaluating higher STC performing windows for each of these guest room units to provide a little bit of additional sound buffer from both the airport and then adjacent businesses.
Thank you very much. I'll ask one more time if there's any member of the public or online that would like to testify. Should have done that earlier. Apologize for that. Seeing none. Any other questions for the applicants or staff? Seeing none for that, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and turn it over for comments and a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm not sure who to address this to, if it's Josh or our attorney, or perhaps you can answer this, but the concerns that were presented to us are, it seems to me that those are planning and zoning concerns or ACHD concerns, and we are DR. Is that, I don't know what to do with that.
Mr. Chair, Committee
Yes.
Member Zuckerman, we do review on-site circulation, and we do take generally ACHD's discretion regarding their traffic analysis in regard to roadway improvements, which they haven't required any roadway improvements besides the sidewalk improvements and the curb and gutter improvements. In regard to the use is allowed. We don't have anything that would require a reduction in size of their proposal.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and committee
Yes.
members, I'll just jump in real quick to in regards to the noise standards. So City of Boise noise ordinance is a function of the police section of code. So they deal with all noise complaints. There is, though, very limited language about noise in the City of Boise code. So it really only addresses amplified music. So, machinery, things like that are not a basis of a noise complaint. So, the businesses affecting the hotel is not something that is addressed or applicable under Boise code. So I just thought I would clarify that real quick.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, while I'm sympathetic to the concerns that the two gentlemen raised with their respective issues out there with on-street parking and the nature of that parking, as well as the noise, I think the noise with the dynamometers and that has probably been addressed and covered more adequately with the airport flyover pathways type of thing. As far as that situation affecting your future property in terms of when you decide to sell it or whatever, I doubt that unless the zoning is changed, that there will be much impact on your particular property. With regard to the on-street parking, that is a problem for the other gentleman. Again, I think that's not in our purview here to address. I think we can acknowledge that it is a problem, but it's probably a problem that needs to be handled by the Ada County Highway District or the city in terms of what can be parked and what street parking can be utilized for in that area. So like I say, I think it's probably something that gets kicked up to a higher authority than what we have here. So with that, I would move to approve DRH 22-00174 as recommended in the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the recommended conditions of approval as noted in the staff report. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll.
Rudine,
Aye.
Sabala,
Aye.
Zuckerman,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much.